Yes. Good evening. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for coming. Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to say that there will be several more musical breaks tonight, and I hope that you will share your applause with the musicians. Yeah, tonight and throughout, yes, of course. It would have been Susie's preference. She knew, as we all do, that as a lover of the arts, that applause is great and it's free. So it's how we say thank you. Hi everybody, my name is Miles. I'm Susie's nephew. My mom asked me to say a few words by way of introduction. I want to start with a Susie story. Susie was at the Palace of the Legion of Honor in San Francisco one day, as was not uncommon. As we mentioned, she's a lover of the arts. On this particular day, on the lawn out in front, there were a number of chessboards that were set up with little toy soldiers on them, and groups of people would run up to the chessboards and write notes and run over to one of the other chessboards. And so she spoke to one of the docents and said, "What's going on here today?" He said, "Oh, this is an all-day puzzle hunt that's going on." And Susie said, "Oh, that's the kind of thing my nephew does. In fact, that's him right over there." So, any of you who ever ran into Susie unexpectedly out in the world at Berkeley Rep, she was out and about. There were a lot of chance encounters. In fact, by way of introducing one another, since we're all here to celebrate Susie and bring this community together of family and friends, I'd like to encourage you to, right now, to take a moment, turn to somebody you don't know, seated near you, and explain how you know Susie. Give yourselves a round of applause. It's free. Well, of course, thank you to all of you, whatever your connection may be, being part of our extended family and friends of the many communities and interests and activities and hobbies that Susie participated in. Fairyland was among them, for those of you who are wondering the connection here. Susie volunteered in the garden here, applying one of her many talents to this very special place here in Oakland. Also want to, as a housekeeping note, extend a thanks to Jackie Salas, who is the head gardener here at Fairyland, a very esteemed title. There'll be a rose planted in Susie's memory at a later date. Following tonight's program, there'll be a reception at the Emerald City Stage. We'll all travel there, I presume, by Yellow Brick Road. There'll be an opportunity to offer your wishes and thoughts that we planted along with the rose. That'll be a little bit later. Well, I've only got one mom. She's only got one sister, and that's Susie. And I spent the last couple days writing down thoughts and memories, but I didn't get much farther than that in terms of preparing remarks, and I think it's because I'm reluctant. It's a rotten shame. I may not be a very good eulogizer. I may say things that I shouldn't say. So I hope you'll forgive me. I may not be invited back, but I've waived my usual appearance fee, so, you know. Taking a step back and thinking about my childhood and experience from a removed perspective, I try to picture it, and I can't, and I think it's because I haven't done a good enough job about asking my parents about our family history, something I want to do more of. But I imagine my mom and dad, young people, part of this circle of friends that I've seen pictures of, and I have heard many stories about in El Cerrito and Berkeley, stories about the pit. And I picture my dad and my mom so young, my dad marrying into this family, marrying my mom, this wonderful, amazing person, wonderful, amazing couple, and then Susie, kind of like a bonus, I want to say. At least that was how it felt from our family. We got this bonus relative. She was around a lot. She was at the house all the time. Sometimes we couldn't get rid of her. Like I said, I might say some stuff that I'm not supposed to say. But we had a very special relationship. We were so lucky to have her in our family. And, you know, birthdays were a special occasion. Each of us kids would usually get to do sleepovers at Susie as part of a special birthday celebration. And as a high schooler, I spent a lot of time, this was before blogs and Facebook, I spent a lot of time pouring out my very tumultuous emotions longhand into journals and diaries, pages and pages of intrigue and big feelings during my teenage years. And Susie's birthday tradition was she would give me a journal, and then I would spend the following year filling it up with big feelings. So there's a connection there. Susie was the first person I knew who drove a Toyota Tercel. Everybody's got one, I guess. First person. Jewish holidays were another occasion when we would connect with Susie, and she's part of a connection to the Jewish tradition on my mom's side of the family. And with her being gone, I feel some of that loss. I think that although religion was not a part of my upbringing, and it's not a part of my life and my family life now, I think that there's a lot of value in the Jewish traditions of grieving and thinking about how we behave and how we feel after someone's passed. I hope to draw upon that. I'll always think of Susie whenever I hear somebody describe a woman of any age as gal. That was a Susie word. You could be 6 or you could be 66. She'd call you a gal. I remember her photography. She would have exhibits from time to time, and you know, she poured herself into this work. There were so many things that she did. Sometimes she would fly down to Los Angeles to participate in a crosswords puzzle tournament with her Uncle Chuck as a duo, the two of them solving puzzles together, and at the same time, you know, taking photographs and having them shown around town. So many interests. I'll always think of Susie when I hear someone describe in great detail what everybody ate. I'm going to pull the curtain back a little bit here. This is one of the first instances of my being sort of like let in on some of the grown-up talk. And again, this may fall into the category of things that I shouldn't say, but come and get me. I remember my parents once sort of letting me in a little bit and saying, sometimes it really exasperates us when Susie describes what everybody ate. And I feel like that's a pretty innocuous thing to be frustrated with. It's not like, oh, we're so frustrated, like, what a terrible person. No, it's just like, and there, like, what's wrong with that? Believe me, I love food. I like hearing what people eat. But there was a certain completeness and a certain thoroughness to the detail. And something else I've come to appreciate a little bit older, like, if you're somebody who has ever, like, struggled with, trying not to put on weight or trying to lose weight, that was clearly something that was never a problem for Susie. And so hearing this incredibly thin, fit person describe in great detail all the rich food that everybody ate, I can understand how that would be frustrating. So the first time that my parents told me this is like our pet peeve thing, the next time we were all in a car, it was my dad and mom in the front, and I think Caitlin was away, and James and Susie and I were in the back seat, and Susie was telling us about a night out with friends, and I said, oh, what did everybody eat? And somehow my mom and dad both triangulated in the rearview mirror and gave me the look of death. And then after the car was parked, my dad came around to where I was and he goes, I almost crashed the car when you said that. Just a couple other things. There was one throwaway remark that I remember, just an off-the-cuff thing, and it stuck with me, who knows why. We were with the grandparents. We were with Sam and Betty, and Sam was telling Susie about some book that she ought to read. And Susie said, yeah, right, with all that spare time I have. And it stuck with me for a couple of reasons. I mean, it's not like Susie's greatest bon mot or anything. Like, it's not a quip for the ages, but I remember thinking it seems like you have a lot of time. You do all these activities. And now I think, no, she didn't have a lot of spare time. None of us do. She was so young. It's so unfair. And I want to say, screw you, cancer. Holidays we spent together. Thanksgiving, Susie always came, and she was usually late because, not late, there was a catering gig that she worked every year for this family. She would help out with their Thanksgiving and then come and join our family. So she got to do Thanksgiving with two families every year. And when she got sick and she died, I remember thinking, it's going to be so sad for that other family this Thanksgiving when she can't join them there. And then I thought, oh, right, and our family. So, on a happier note, I'll always think of Susie when there is tap dancing. I'm so happy to see her tap dance buddies are here representing. Give it up for the tap dancers. Yeah. For several years, Susie and I both went to Camp Cazadero, an overnight tap dance camp, and here we were, separated by several decades of age. Both campers at the same tap dance camp, and she could tell you stories about her class and her teacher, who she loved so much. And right now, I am sorry to say, my tap shoes are in a corner, growing dust, and literally mold. And I'm not going to let that happen anymore, because none of us has enough spare time. Let's see, any more orders of business here? All right, I'm going to pass the mic off. We've got several family members and friends who are here. This is a celebration. I'm sorry for getting heavy, but I feel what I feel. And we'd like some remembrances. And to tell us a little bit about the history of Susie Elkind, I'd like to introduce my esteemed dad, Bruce Nye.
Your son. Well, good evening. As you all know, we're going to be sharing stories and memories both from the podium and out at the reception afterwards, memories about Susie, and sharing a lot of the music that she loved. But as Miles said, I want to start with some history. Natalie Susan Elkind. That's right. Natalie Susan Elkind was born in San Francisco on April 9th, 1949. For her first 2 years, she lived with her parents, Sam and Betty, in an old Victorian house on Turk Street in San Francisco that had been converted into apartments. And before long, her little sister Risa was born, and the young Elkind family settled into a home on Humphrey Avenue in Richmond. Little Natalie had a short hospital stay as an infant, nothing too serious, but family legend has it that the nurses thought Natalie was too fancy a name for a baby. Which they were right. So they started calling her Susie. And from then on, she was Susie at home with family and friends, but Natalie at school and everywhere else. While the Elkinds mostly lived on Humphrey Avenue until 1964, there was one very memorable year when Susie was 7 and the family picked up and moved to New York for a year so that Sam could work on his doctorate at Columbia. Susie had already started taking ballet and tap lessons in Richmond, and it was in New York that she and Risa took dance lessons from June Taylor. Some of you fools remember June Taylor, of the then very famous June Taylor dancers. For those who don't, there's Google. Susie danced off and on as a girl, and then, as you've heard, long after she grew up and she put those tap shoes back on and she met La Vida Falaci and she started dancing with the group that's all here representing the tap dancers again. The Elkinds were members of Temple Beth Hillel in Richmond, and it was there that Susie was also a trailblazer, helping to stir controversy by being the very first girl ever at that synagogue to have a bat mitzvah. When Susie was 9, something very important happened both to her and to just about everyone else that we know. The New York Giants moved to San Francisco. And Susie, under her father's mentorship, fell in love with baseball. Growing up listening to Russ and Lon, following Mays and McCovey, Marichal, Perry, Sabeda, and later Bobby Bonds, and later still Barry Bonds. And in the last 5 years, she became a huge fan of Hunter Pence, Buster Posey, Matt Cain, and Tim Lincecum, and it was only appropriate that in May of this year, after hearing she was sick, the Giants sent her baseballs autographed by Buster and Timmy. In 1964, the Elkind family moved from Richmond to El Cerrito, and Susie started at El Cerrito High School as a sophomore. There, her dad was the much beloved drama teacher. Some big changes happened then. That was the year she threw away her eyeglasses and traded them for contact lenses. She made some high school friends who would be with her for life, some of whom are here tonight, and at least one of whom you're going to hear from. And she dropped the name Natalie for good. From then on, everywhere she went, she was Susie. And did she ever go places? My goodness. Susie took her first trip to Europe as soon as she graduated from high school, and she never stopped traveling. We ran across her travel journal a few days ago from her very next trip to Europe, just a few years later, and what a trip it was. It was about 10 weeks in 1971. London to Paris to Amsterdam to Florence to Rome to Barcelona, and then back to England. In fact, we didn't understand it at the time because we hadn't heard of the concept, but she was one of the very early Europe backpackers before that became a thing. I'm pretty sure it was after this trip that Risa and I picked her up at the Oakland airport, and when her backpack, which was about that big, came down the luggage chute and onto the carousel, I asked her where the rest of her baggage was. She said, "That's everything." 10 weeks. As we can tell from the documentation in her several passports and her travel journals and her incredibly beautiful photographs, she saw a lot of the world, traveling with friends and family and in groups or just by herself. She made repeated trips to New York and London and came to feel at home in both places. She went with her dad on his last of many theater trips to London. Most recently, she went on safari to Kenya, and just last fall had another grand adventure in Italy. But after Susie came back from her very first trip, she enrolled at the University of California at Berkeley, where she graduated with a degree in psychology. While she was there, she ushered at Zellerbach Auditorium and at other Cal performance venues. Ushering is something she went on doing for the rest of her life. And quite aside from ushering, as Miles touched on, she was such an avid follower and supporter of the arts. You'd find her at the symphony, at the theater, at dance presentations, and very often at Yoshi's Night Spot, where she saw as much live jazz as just about anybody I know. None of you will be surprised to learn, I'm sure, that Susie specifically asked us to have jazz at tonight's remembrance, and that she requested Steve Heckman and Ron Marabuto be here. Thank you again very much. And that she picked most of tonight's playlist as well. Anyway, after her freshman year of college, Susie moved to her first apartment in Berkeley. For the next 4 decades, she lived in several East Bay apartments and houses with a succession of roommates, first in Berkeley and then for many decades here in Oakland. During these years, she began a tradition of collaborative cooking, something she always enjoyed doing with friends and family. She was such a helper when we hosted family events or friend events. When we have family over and it's time to set the table or prepare a dish or stir a sauce or open some wine or ask for some knowledgeable cooking advice or help, I don't think I am ever going to get over thinking, well, Susie can help with that. And for many years, as Miles mentioned, she was a big part of the Campbell family's Thanksgiving, which she always prepared and served before she raced over to our house for Thanksgiving dinner. In 1977, Susie took on another welcome job and the important work, as you've already gathered, of being an aunt when her niece Caitlin was born. As Aunt Suze, her third person, Susie went on to play a huge part in the lives of our 3 children. And when they grew up and had children of their own, she gladly and proudly took on the title of Great Aunt Suze, cherishing her visits with her great niece and great nephews. But you're friends of hers and family of hers, so you already know everything you need to know about this, because anybody who knew Susie has heard all about the Nye family. We live in a society where a common ice-breaking question is, what do you do? Which usually means, what is your job? With Susie, what is your job would not get you all that close to the things that mattered. She always had a job of some sort. She worked for architects, for lawyers, the Parks and Rec department, and a slew of other places. She worked at the Old Furniture Mart in San Francisco and for several local publications. As an important sideline, Susie did a lot of house sitting and catering and editorial work for publishing companies. But closer to her heart, she took up photography and was an old school film photographer. Her work, her beautiful work, was shown in galleries, clubs, and other venues. She often donated her framed photographs for auctions, and many of us are lucky enough to have some of her pieces displayed in our homes. She also took classes in landscape design, learned the art of quilting, and ran the Beta Breakers every year for many, many years. As you heard, Susie volunteered here as a gardener, also as an usher. She was a reader for the Read Aloud program started by Marilyn Nye, worked at Project Open Hand as a volunteer, volunteered for Make Oakland Better Now, the Aurora Theater, and for many other organizations. She participated in the scholarship program her parents had established at San Francisco State University, helping to select worthy recipients for that scholarship. And I'm happy to say that following her very generous bequest to that endowment, the scholarship will hereinafter be known as the Elkind Family Scholarship. In recent years, she found the perfect balance and was very happy working at Oakland Rotary No. 3, doing some editorial work from home, again volunteering here at Fairyland, house sitting and spending time with her family. I first met Susie when I was a very young teenager, and while I'm lucky to have birth siblings I'm very close to, for all intents and purposes, she was my sister too. This evening is a celebration of a life very well lived, and I know we are all looking forward to hearing the great memories and stories of someone we all love so much. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark, and I'm Susie's cousin, and I'm here to give a cousin's perspective of Susie's life. There are 6 of us cousins on the Elkind side of the family. Susie was the oldest. I was the second, and then came cousins Sheila and Risa and Nanette, and then baby Julie, who's here today. We were also known as the Big Six, the Magnificent Six, lots of names. Susie always liked it when for a few months every year we were the same age. We've always been a close bunch. We'd see each other regularly every year, birthdays, Thanksgivings, Passovers, Hanukkah dinners, weddings, wedding anniversaries, and one bar mitzvah. That was me. When we were little, our grandfather, Mike Elkind, would take us on trips to feed the ducks in Golden Gate Park and the Palace of Fine Arts. And Susie and I loved it when he would take us to the Jewish bakeries in the Fillmore district for some pastries and cookies. Grandpa Mike was an entrepreneur who had varied business investments, and Uncle Sam, Susie's dad and Reese's dad, would tell the funniest stories of Grandpa's enterprises, which included the rag business, the Petaluma 8 business, the South of Market saloon business, and the priceless 1825 Turk Street property, and a motel on the Strip in Ukiah. And it was that motel on Ukiah that one summer, Susie, Risa, and I, and our families spent a few days. And you may ask, why would anyone in their right mind want a vacation in the summer in Ukiah? But again, we were 10 and 11 years old, and it didn't matter, and we had a good time. In the mid-'60s, when we were in our teens, my hip cousin Susie introduced me to new sounds of the Beatles, Rubber Soul, and Simon & Garfunkel's The Sound of Silence and Carole King. Around that same time, Chuck, our Uncle Chuck and Aunt Rocky, and cousins Sheila, Nanette, and Julie moved from upstate New York to Manhattan Beach. And soon the annual trips to Southern California began. Susie was there for part of those wild 60s Manhattan Beach parties at the famous 763 11th Street Club. In the 1970s, I introduced Susie to the sport of rugby. No, she didn't play for the women's rugby team, but she was quite taken with the sport that allowed her to check out the athletic guys in their sweaty and muddy rugby uniforms. Susie loved the mountains and would visit me when I worked at Camp Mather near Yosemite. Many years later, Susie joined an elite group of hikers who thought they knew what they were doing, including Robert Byrne, who's here today, myself, cousin Nanette, and her husband Jeff, and their young daughters Marissa and Rachel, in an attempt to hike up to the top of Half Dome in Yosemite. Like most of us, Susie made it as far as the base of Half Dome before the group decided we needed to start hiking back down, as it was late and we only had a few hours of daylight left to hike the 8 miles back down to the Yosemite Valley. As it was, we hiked the last half hour in darkness and then almost ran out of gas getting back to camp, so it's quite a memory. In 1984, Susie and I took a trip together to Hawaii with a group of friends, including Robert and Cecily, who are here today. Before meeting our group on Maui, Susie and I stopped over in Oahu to visit with cousins Nanette and her husband Jeff, and to see for the first time their precious 2-year-old daughter Marissa. At her first glance at Marissa, Susie exclaimed her famous, "What a cutie!" The trip with Robert and Cecily to Hawaii was so much fun that we jumped at the invitation to join them on a houseboat in 1987. There was good food, good wine, too much sun, lots of naps, and great companionship. Susie always enjoyed the company of her aunts and uncles, especially of her Aunt Ruth and her Uncle Chuck and Aunt Rocky. She went on a memorable trip with Aunt Ruth to New York City, and despite a busy schedule, Susie would always find time to have a luncheon date with Aunt Ruth. She made it a point to visit her Uncle Chuck and Aunt Rocky in Manhattan Beach at least several times a year, and while down there, she would make sure to find quality time to spend with her cousins Sheila and Julie and Annette. Susie continued this annual trek to the Southland as recently as May of last year, when she and I stayed with Uncle Chuck and Aunt Rocky to celebrate his birthday and my retirement. The last great cousin get-together was at cousin Marissa's wedding. Marissa was the one who was 2 years old when Susie said, "What a cutie." Last October in Hawaii. Although not feeling well, Susie was not going to miss this event and allowed all the Elkind cousins to be together one last time. When my mom's health began to falter a few years ago, I asked Susie and Risa for their assistance in helping to move Aunt Ruth from her apartment on Potrero Hill to an assisted living residence. There was no hesitation, and their help was critical in making Aunt Ruth feel comfortable, and I will always be forever grateful to Susie and Risa. Susie continued to visit Aunt Ruth year after year. During these visits with Aunt Ruth, Susie became closer to an old friend of my mom's, Denise Kessler, who's in her own right a quite colorful character. We would visit them in the redwoods up in Marin, where Denise lived. One of the last times Ruth, Denise, Susie, myself, and Denise's granddaughter Shelley met at the redwoods in Marin for Aunt Ruth's birthday. Denise thought it would be fun to put a little purple of color in my mom's hair, just like Denise did in her own hair. Susie nearly fell down laughing at the sight of these two old dames with purple in their hair. Denise passed away at the age of 98, only a month before Susie departed us. I'm so lucky to have had Susie in my life and have had so many wonderful memories that we shared together. I miss her, and it hurts to know that she's not here with us, but then I close my eyes and I see Susie with Denise, and they're smiling and they're laughing, and they have purple in their hair.
This is beautiful Susie as I first knew her. I'm Leslie. Why Susie? All of our lives are sadder without Susie. As we find ourselves without her, makes many of us return to our beginnings with her, as we gather our memories to comfort ourselves for the rest of our lives. That's why I'm going back to when we met as sophomores in high school. Of all the friends to choose, why Susie? We chose each other, of course, and each other's families. Sam, Betty, and Risa came with Susie. What a package. I so fondly remember my visits in Elkind's kitchen on Everett Street. And as my sister said, Susie was family. Our relationship started in French class in the 10th grade. The relationships we began as teenagers held its shape. I wanted to say 40 years, but it's actually 50. Even 2 weeks after she died, Susie visited me in a dream so vivid, I thought it couldn't have been a dream. She arrived in the middle of the night as a fluttering winged angel, and her essence went through me, good and sweet to her core. Susie had found me again and had gifted me with her visit as she had done so many times before. I'm going to read some of what she wrote in my yearbooks. After reading what she wrote, I asked Risa to send me what I wrote to her. Oy vey, I said upon reading them. All that adolescent angst, mortifying, to borrow a word from way back then. So here are just a few tidbits with heavy edits to preserve our dignity. So this is 1966. Dear Leslie, sweetheart, my goodness, honey, what a tremendous year. Sunday school was groovy, and it was topped off with that dinner. Oh, brother. That's really a Susie word, too. I can hardly wait to get out of there. What an attitude. Terrible, aren't I? I know I'm stupid and dumb, but Les, what can I do, dear? We've had a terrific year with groovy English, hurrah, and Good old French, yeah. Thank God we were in Sunday school together. I couldn't have survived if you hadn't been there. You're a great consoler and cheer-upper. Good luck with all your probs. I'm sure everything will be okay, honey dear. Love and kisses, Susie. And from 1967. Dear Leslie, you know, honey, there are so many things I want to say and I don't know where to begin. Ever since our sophomore year, we've been friends, but this year really did it. I feel so close to you, not only because of our ancient heritage. Susie and I were among few Jewish kids at El Cerrito, but because we understand each other so well. You always make me feel normal. It's amazing how much people have in common. All they have to do is get to know each other like we did. I could recount all the phases we've been through, our loves, our dreams, and good old reality, but then I'd have to write forever. Remember all the things we talked about? I enjoyed it so much. I'm so glad we can look back and laugh and laugh. Just knowing you and having you as a friend has made me happy. Let's always be that kind of friend, okay? I've probably left out many things, but believe me, they are securely inventoried in my tangled mind. Somewhere. Someday, all our dreams will come true and we can look back on these days and laugh and cry. But remember, thank you so much for being my friend. Love, always, Susie. I know her words speak to other of Susie's friends from high school that are here, such as Margie and Karen. Susie wrote lovingly and openly to all of us about how important our friendships were to her. And I don't want to go too long, so a few words from what I wrote to her. 1967. Dear Susie, well, my dear, high school is almost over. You're one of my most sensitive friends, and I'll really miss seeing you every day. But this isn't goodbye, because our friendship will grow as we have common feelings, and even though we're close to tears in a lot of our talks, we laugh a lot, and it's really hearty laughter, and that's a pun, I think, since it's from the heart. I wish you wouldn't worry about certain things like you do. It's all there, kiddo. I'm happy you're going to Cal. Thank you for always being so nice and being on my side, Susie. We'll have to do many things together. And we did. I'd like to leave you reading from Susie's card to me upon my mom's death. The card quoted The Little Prince. In one of the stars I shall be living, I, one of them. I shall be laughing, and so it will be as if all the stars were laughing when you look at the sky at night. And there is sweetness in the laughter of all the stars and in the memories of those you love. Penny Russell, one of Susie's beloved friends, told me of her last visit with Susie. Penny was crying. And Susie told her the hardest part for her was seeing how hard it was for everyone else. How right she was, and how truly beautifully Susie that was. So heartfelt sympathy from Susie to all of us who had the privilege to be a family member or friend or colleague of hers. I'd been in Greece when Susie was in her last days. When I finally arrived to see her 2 days before she died, she said, "I've been telling everyone you would kill me if you didn't get to see me." Her humor and love were steadfast and provide lasting comfort.
says that love is blind. Still we're often told, seek and you shall find. So I'm going to seek a certain girl I've had in mind. Looking everywhere, haven't found her yet. She's the big affair I cannot forget. Only girl I ever think of with regret. I'd like to add her initial to my monogram. Tell me where's the shepherd for this lost lamb? There's a somebody I'm longing to see. I know I could always be good to one who watched over me. Although I may not be the one some girls think of as handsome. In my heart, she'll carry the key. Won't you tell her please to put on some speed? Follow my lead. Oh, how I need someone to watch over me. Although I may not be the one some girls think of as handsome, in my heart, she'll carry the Won't you tell her please to put on some speed? Follow my lead. Oh, how I need someone to watch over. Someone to watch over me.
Mr. Ed Reed. Mr. Ed Reed. Lee Bloom on piano. Lee Bloom. Noah Schenker on bass. Noah Schenker. Ron Marabuto on drums. Ron Marabuto. I'm Steve Heckman. Thank you so much.
You guys are going to be a very difficult act to follow. Thanks a lot. Hi, everybody. I'm Caitlin Nye. I'm Susie's niece, and no offense, guys, I have it on good authority. I was her favorite niece. When I arrived here in May, the week that Susie died, I told my mom So, on my way out here, I was thinking about some things, and I wrote a thing. Some kind of thing. It's a thing. I don't know. So, I'm going to read you the thing, and also share with you that I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to read this to Susie, so she got to hear it as well before she passed. Okay. Before my eyes even open, the smell of eucalyptus through the open window reminds me I have not slept in my own bed, but I have slept well. I shift my weight, get comfortable, avoid falling off the couch. At last, unable to deny my waking state any longer, I sit up and stare for a long minute out the window at the vast and brown canyon dotted here and there with houses. It is morning, a reasonable time for a child of 8 or 9 to be awake, likely too early for just about anybody else. But I have been promised French toast. I pad over to the kitchen, inspect the hanging wire baskets for their usual holdings of onions, fruit, tomatoes. I turn the crank on the pasta maker, mesmerized by the interlocking metal parts that turn yeasted dough into fettuccine for dinner the night before. I am getting impatient. Still, I know better than to wander into either the bedroom or the darkroom with its pungent chemicals and orderly trays. I wait. Knowing me, I pick up a book to read. I come from a family of aunts. Sure, there are mothers, fathers, uncles, an assortment of brothers, cousins, both near and far, grandparents. But the confidence is shared with aunts. The surprising wisdom and insight into family members and stories I thought I knew well, the adventures and misadventures undertaken in their care are the fabric of family legend for at least 2 generations. Neighborhood organizing, international travel, reminders to put some lipstick on to a new mother with a baby in intensive care, the first trip to New York City, sage guidance for growing girls holding mothers at arm's length. In my family, this is the stuff of aunts. I have gone bra shopping with my aunt when I no longer wanted to go with my mother. I have confided in her about doomed love affairs. I once snuck a boy home after school when she was on duty with me for a long weekend. We have gone together to the Met, the MoMA, the Palace of Fine Arts, the beach, Broadway. We have dined on turtle in a Japanese guest house. We went apple picking when my daughter was in utero, not even the size of seed. She has cuddled and sung to both of my babies, which means she has shared in my very grandest adventure of all. I think of how she cuddled and sang to me. Finally, 8 o'clock arrives. I am allowed to venture into my aunt's bedroom, furnished with an antique dressing table and vanity, a bed luxuriously big enough for one. She sleeps in just a Beta Braid Pierce t-shirt and underwear, which I find positively bohemian, except I am a kid and don't know the word bohemian. Things I find in her room that I would never find in my parents' bedroom. An architect's drafting table, hats. The curious feeling of being with an adult who loves me and my brothers, but has not made having her own children a priority, which means I have to, be somewhat less of a child when we are together. It is a thrilling feeling. We break eggs, whisk, laugh, play the blues on her stereo. I try hard not to be a brat about washing the dishes without a dishwasher. She tries hard to be patient with me while I take a too long shower and get water all over the bathroom. I help water the plants. She helps me roll up my sleeping bag. We enjoy a few more minutes of just us boils. My mother arrives, shopping list and possibly one of my brothers in hand, and my sleepover at my Aunt Susie's house is over. My mother and I climb the wooden stairs to street level. My aunt is on her deck, reading the Sunday paper in peace.
Oh.
Good evening, I'm Gail. Tonight I'd like to share some memories about Susie and qualities and values that in my view were really at the core of who she was. And I'll start by saying that Susie had a wonderful life. I met Susie in the early 70s thanks to our mutual friend, Karen Mayers. But Susie and I became dear friends in 1978 after we became roommates. And Susie was a great roommate, an all-around good partner for doing just about anything, and easy to live with. She had a we-can-do-this spirit that got things done and created many spontaneous events at our house. If folks dropped by unexpectedly, she could miraculously come up with a brunch menu from leftovers. We all know Susie was a good cook, but she was brave in the kitchen. She tackled just about anything, with or without a recipe. She really loved to entertain others and did so throughout her life. In all the years I knew Susie, I never knew her to be tired. She possessed a boundless energy. Here's an example of a typical Susie weekend day. Get up early, meet someone for breakfast, go for a walk, run an errand or two, pop over to San Francisco to see the Giants game. While over there, meet some other people, have dinner, maybe squeeze in a movie at a theater, maybe come home. Usher, who knows? She got more out of 24 hours than anybody I know or ever will know. She utilized every moment of her life to be a part of life. As we all know, she absolutely loved the theater and volunteered and supported many theatrical organizations. She had a tremendous appreciation for the written and spoken word. She was a great audience, and best of all, she thought you were funny and had good stories too. Whether she was off to the theater, tap dance class, catering, copy editing, performing her job at the Rotary, gardening, at home or here at Fairyland as a volunteer, knitting a baby blanket. She never seemed rushed or frantic. In fact, that was one of the traits I always admired about her. She could be going Mach 4, but was calm and serene while juggling many plates. She really knew how to enjoy life. We know Susie loves seeing the world, and she and I got to travel a bit, as I know many of you did as well. We had a lot of fun doing that, but she did a lot of traveling on her own, as you've heard. And to my mind, she had a lot of courage doing that, going off on her own cross-country road trips to see family and friends without a co-pilot, off to Japan or Africa, all on her own. Before it was popular, Susie had a bucket list of places she wanted to see or things to do, and she was knocking them off one at a time right up to the end of her life. She was enthusiastic about new people, new places, and engaged in every way she could to know the world. To be a part of Susie's orbit was a delight because she really did have 2 degrees of separation from so many people. And I'm sure you've had this experience. You're out with Susie, she meets or gets introduced to someone, and bingo, she has a connection. It would go sort of like this. Oh, you're Ethel Gersner's grandson. Ah, well, Ethel's sister is a friend of my cousin in New York, and my cousin's mother dated Ethel's brother, so we're practically related. I loved that about her. And I was always amazed, how could she keep all of this in her head, all these bits and pieces from memory? How could she keep it straight? Then I figured it out. Her secret was love. She had a big heart and a lot of love for the people in her orbit, and she made a conscious effort to know them and find and then build on connections. That's how she created this incredible network of people and relationships. Just look at all of us. When you have known someone for around 40 years, you have a chance to share a lot of life. And time and again, Susie proved herself to be somebody you could count on. If she said she was going to help out or do something, make something, participate, whatever it was, she generally did, and usually did more than what she promised. There wasn't a phony bone in her body. What you saw was who she was, a kind, gentle, and generous person who loved people. If you've seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life, a seasonal favorite of Susie's, you know that Clarence, the guardian angel, was sent to show George Bailey, Jimmy Stewart's character, how many lives he affected and how important it was that George was in the world. Clarence helped George realize how we are connected to one another in this life in ways small and large, and that is our purpose for being here, to care and support one another. And I feel Susie's life achieved that purpose. She blessed us by her gifts of love and friendship. So thank you, Susie, for inviting us into your wonderful life. We will never forget you. And it is said that to be remembered is to live on. So live on, Susie, live on.
Thank you.
that we all need to remember, and I know Susie knows all about it. It's called Here's to Life. No complaints and no regrets. I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets. For I have learned that what you give is all you get. So give it all you got. I had my share, I took my fill, and even though I'm satisfied, I'm hungry still to see what's down another road beyond the hill, and do it all again. So here's to life and every joy it brings. So here's to life, to dreamers and their dreams. Funny how the time just flies. Love can go from warm hellos to sad goodbyes and leave you with the memories you've memorized to keep your winters warm. For there's no yes in yesterday, and who knows what tomorrow brings or takes away. As long as I'm still in the game, I want to play for laughs, for life, for love. So here's to life and every joy it brings. And here's to you. Here's to you.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm James. I want to thank everyone for coming to help celebrate my Aunt Sue's life tonight. I was thinking earlier today about what it means to celebrate someone's life. I think part of it is a lot of what we've heard here so far. We tell their story. We want to hear about where they went, what they did, whose lives they touched. And I think that part of the reason why we do that is to figure out what lessons we can take from how they lived their life. I think it's a cliche because it's true. I think that taking lessons from someone whose past is important, especially someone like my Aunt Suze who was taken much too soon. And the lesson I was thinking about how Suze lived her life that I was reflecting on was about how she lived with empathy. I think empathy means a lot of different things, but what it means to me is if you have empathy for someone, you take them as they are, you accept what it is that they have to say and what they have to give, and you give back to them your true self. And I know that Suze was such an important part of my whole family's lives, and we always felt that empathy towards us, especially the three Nye kids, me and my older siblings. I was kind of a weird kid. It's hard to get along with, hard to open up to people, and I think that it would have been easy for someone to not really try that hard, but Suze didn't. She always tried. She always, on our sleepovers or family dinners or holidays where she was so omnipresent, she always wanted to hear what I was up to and wanted to support my activities. And we did find something that we had in common, like jazz music or copy editing. I could always talk to her about misplaced apostrophes. Whenever we could find something like that, it just made, you could tell, it just made her so happy, and that was just part of who she was. The story I remember I was thinking about earlier this week about empathy was from my brother's wedding, where Suze and I were dancing. Because, as we all know, and especially her tap dancing friend, Suze was a heck of a dancer. I didn't really know how to dance then. I still don't, but especially didn't back then. But it was a wedding, so you had to dance, so we were dancing. As we were out there on the dance floor. I don't remember what the song was, but I was really giving it my all. It was 110%. And I think what we got was something, it was kind of like one of these, it was like, really, really impressive stuff. If you were on house left and you couldn't see it because of the lectern, you weren't missing much. So I was doing my moves, and it would have been easier for Suze to ignore that and just pretend that wasn't happening to save ourselves both the embarrassment. But she didn't. She started doing the same stupid pointing side to side because what she understood about dancing is that you have to understand what the other person is giving you and give them back some part of that was also true to what you had to say. And that was part of what made Suze's empathy mean so much throughout all of my life and the lives of everyone else who's here in the room today. In May, I was very fortunate to be able to fly down from Portland, where I live, with my son, who then was 8 months old. My son Sam, named after her father Sam. And I'd always liked Suze and gotten along, but that moment where I kind of understood how much of herself she'd given to us, and getting to see how much joy it brought her to get to hang out with this baby, and kind of think about how that had been me once. I'd been this tiny dude playing catch with a ball or just kind of sitting motionless on the carpet. That was mostly what Sam was doing at the time. But having that see her so happy, even in the very last week of her life, to have this new small person to interact with and give some part of herself. I've been thinking about that a lot, and I'm sure I'll be thinking about that for the rest of my life. Just how much empathy she gave to all of us, even the ones who she didn't get to know for that long. So, as part of celebrating Suze's life tonight, I think that we should continue to tell the stories and remember the lessons. And I hope that what's more, we can have those lessons lived in our own lives every day, in continuing to have empathy for each other in ways that matter to you and to your community, whether it's patronage of the arts or volunteering or family or friendship, anything that was part of how Suze lived her life. I hope that we can all put into our own. And in the spirit of celebrating Suze's life every day, I want to finish it off with a poem from the Yom Kippur Memorial Service that goes like this. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Brenda Kahn, and the Kahns and the Elkinds were old family friends, great family friends, our parents, and I got the benefit of that, of being friends with Lisa and Susie my entire life. So Susie told Lisa that she wanted something read in Hebrew at her service, so I have that honor. And this poem is by Hannah Senish, and it's called There Are Stars, and it's kind of a cosmic coincidence that in her inscription to Leslie in the yearbook, Susie wrote about stars from The Little Prince, so it's kind of a cosmic thing that this poem that Risa selected is also dealing with stars. I'll read it first in Hebrew and then in English. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה רק כאשר הם עצמם עבדו ואינם. יש אנשים שזיו זכרם מאיר כאשר הם עצמם אינם עוד בתוכנו. אורות אלה המבהיקים בחשכת הליל, הם שמראים לאדם את הדרך. There are stars up above, so far away, we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. The memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. Thank you.
say, I'm quelling. These kids. If you ever went anywhere with Susie, you probably ran into somebody she knew. This happened to her all the time. It was always a bonus if the person she ran into also knew our dad. I know that many of you here tonight knew our dad, and I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that on Susie's behalf. So, on the count of 3, if you knew Sam Elkind, give a shout out, I knew your dad. 1, 2, 3.
I knew your dad.
Whoa, okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay. So many of you have expressed your shock and grief over Susie's passing and have talked about the ways to keep her memory alive. I have a few suggestions. If you do any of the following things, think of them as Susie moments. And when they happen and you take notice, think of them as your own Susie moments going forward. Here are a few to get you started. When you were the first to arrive at a party and the last to leave after helping with both setup and cleanup, this is a Susie moment. When you receive a wedding invitation and decide what you're going to wear that same day. Or when you pack for your next trip 3 months in advance. These should be recognized as Susie moments. When you describe what you had for lunch or dinner and you use your hands. That's a classic Susie moment. When you compose letters to friends and family on scraps of paper or receipts and keep them all, it's what Susie would do. When you pack more events into a weekend than seems possible, that is a definite Susie moment, especially if you urge your friends to come along. When you decide to work to live and not the other way around and make it work, you've had an important Susie moment. When you step up and cut the wedding cake because no one else knows how to, think of her at this critical moment. When you travel enthusiastically and garden with impunity, think of these as Susie moments. If you had a sister, utter the occasional loving sisterly put down. It was a long-standing tradition between us and nobody did it better. I'll miss that. When you make that sound, when you find a typo, a homonym, or the wrong it's anywhere in print, you've just had a Susie moment. When you stay to hear Tony Bennett sing I Left My Heart in San Francisco after a Giants win, there's another one. When you root for the home team no matter what, year after year after year like she did. When you go the extra mile for your friends or family, that's a definitive Susie moment. When the occasion calls for retail therapy, you heed the call with gusto. When you have the opportunity to dance, you dance, right? When you bake ahead and freeze, think of it as a Susie moment. When you go to the store, buy a birthday card, put a stamp on it, and mail it, forget Facebook and all that, this is the Susie way. When you tell a story, you never say, to make a long story short. The short version is never as good. And small world stories are the best, always. Saying small world makes it a Susie moment for sure. When you come to stay as a house guest and take over the kitchen to make several meals that are enjoyed by all, it's what she always did too. A Susie moment to savor and share with the ones you love. And when you face your biggest challenges in life with doubts and fears, which later give way to strength and determination, when you do even this one last thing the way you choose, that's a Susie moment I'll always remember. I urge all of us here tonight, present in both body and spirit, to keep Susie alive in our hearts, as her great nephew Finn says, by celebrating the Susie moments in our own lives every day.
For those of you who are able to stay with us and who wish to do so, we hope you will. The reception is at Emerald City. There's so much more to be said and to be remembered, but for now, on behalf of all of us and many more, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Sing
Susie.